the NBA All-Star reserves. The NBA All-Star reserves got announced. As everybody knows, or if you didn't know, the coaches are the ones who vote for which players get in. In the Western Conference, Anthony Davis was voted in, but he was replaced by Devin Booker, Paul George, Rudy Gobert, Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul, and Zion Williamson. In the Eastern Conference, Jaylen Brown was voted in, so was James Harden, Zach LaVine, Julius Randle, Ben Simmons, Jason Tatum, and Nikola Vucevic. What do you think about the players who got in?
I mean, I remember when we were talking about potential reserves and potential snubs a couple episodes ago. It was probably like 3 weeks now. And you could just tell from the list of guys that were left off when we were preparing our guesses that there was going to be more snubs this year than probably any other year. But honestly, the way they came out, I wasn't that mad with the rosters. I looked at them, and I don't think that there was anybody on either side that is there that didn't deserve to be there. But at the same time, there was some big snubs because a lot of guys are having great years this year.
I agree. I will say this. Anthony Davis should have never got voted in. He's a superstar. He is one of the better players in the NBA. I had him coming in. I had him as the second best player coming into this season. But based on the year that he's had, averaging 20 to 22 points per game, like 10 rebounds, he wasn't playing like the Anthony Davis that we all know. And he's been injured for the majority of the season. So the fact that the coaches even voted Anthony Davis in was pretty upsetting, and it just goes to show that the All-Star game is more political than anything, to be honest. But all in all, I like this list. Everybody knows how I feel about James Harden. He should have started over Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal had no business starting in the All-Star game, especially because the Wizards are losing so bad. James Harden not only is playing at an MVP caliber level, but the Brooklyn Nets are second in the East. There is no way he should have not been starting. But outside of that, Jaylen Brown, I think he probably deserved it. I think so. Jason Tatum, Zach LaVine, Julius Randle, I'm happy he got in. Ben Simmons, Nikola Vucevic. But when we talk about snubs, in the Eastern Conference, you got a few. Domantas Sabonis, Chris Middleton, Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, Fred VanVleet, if you want to put him in that category. For me in the East, Domantas Sabonis, I think, should have made it over Vucevic. At least. The Pacers are fourth in the East. Sabonis is averaging a double-double, 20 and 10, the same as Vucevic, and the Magic aren't even in the playoff race right now. So he should have definitely gotten over Vucevic. Ben Simmons, I'm okay with. I'm not too mad, even though maybe you could put in Trae Young over him. And I'll just say it. I mean, Jaylen Brown, as much as he's having a great year, but I think two Boston Celtics players should have not made it. It was either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. I think Jaylen Brown has been having a slightly better year than Tatum. So I would have left one of those guys out just because you can't have two all-stars on the same team and you guys are not winning. It just doesn't add up. And then you look at the West, Paul George, I agree. Rudy Gobert, I agree. Dame, I agree. Mitchell, I agree. Chris Paul, even though the stats don't stand out, I 100% agree with that pick, and I would have picked him over Devin Booker as well. Zion Williamson, he's up in the air, but because they're not winning, but in terms of his impact alone, I would have put him there. In the West, guys that didn't make it were Mike Conley, Shea, and De'Aaron Fox for the most part.
Yeah, and people were mad that Devin Booker didn't make it off the rip, but
we knew he was going to get in.
Yeah,
we knew
exactly, especially with the Anthony Davis injury. But I mean, you said it about Chris Paul. I think that with the coaches voting on it, it says a lot about how the coaches feel those two have been impacting that team. And when you watch, I think that Chris Paul has a bigger impact on them winning games than Devin Booker has this season overall. And that's not to take away from Devin Booker. I think it's just says a lot about Chris Paul and what he brings to the table. You see the leap they've taken as a team this season. And then out east, if I had to make one change, I agree with you. I would have put Sabonis in there. and I would have considered either taking out Ben Simmons or Vucevic, but I'm not mad at any of the guys that made it. I don't think there was anybody in the game this year that didn't deserve to be there, I think so.
It just goes to show how many players could have been in the All-Star game. I mean, you had even guys like Gordon Hayward, who is playing really well in Charlotte right now, who didn't make it. And I will say this, Mike Conley, he probably should have been the third guy to make it. Like, if it wasn't, because it's hard to take one of these guys out. As you're not going to take Zion out, because you know not only is Zion having a great season, but you know he is box office.
Yeah. If he's
and him at the All-Star game just makes it more exciting.
If he's putting up the numbers to be there, he'll be there.
Yeah. Donovan Mitchell, you're not going to put Conley over Mitchell. Dame, you're not going to put Conley over Dame. Gobert, maybe you can, but I wouldn't put Conley over Gobert. Paul George, I wouldn't put Conley over Paul George. Really, it was just between Anthony Davis and Chris Paul. Like I said, I thought Anthony Davis should have never made it. So because of that, I would have, Booker was there already because he took his spot. It's really between Mike Conley and Chris Paul. And as much as I think that Mike Conley is having a fantastic season, I'm not putting him over Chris Paul. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be the guy to vote for Mike Conley over Chris Paul. But I think, if anything, what this just shows is that the All-Star game should be expanded. It shouldn't be 12 players that make it every season. It should be about 15.
I would be cool with 15 guys.
Yeah, it should be about 15. I mean, because you look at the NBA now, there are about 20 players averaging 20 points per game now in the NBA. That is a big jump from where we were just 10 or 5 years ago. And because of that, more players are deserving to be in this game. You've seen last year, Bradley Beal and Zach LaVine were snubbed. Now this season, Bradley Beal starting, Zach LaVine made it. He's averaging like 29 points per game. And 2 all-star starters from the East last year are not in it, and are not in the game this season. Pascal Siakam and Trae Young. It just goes to show you.
Trae Young started last year.
Yeah, both starters from last season are not even in the All-Star game this season.
And I feel like people have really soured to Trae Young this season with, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but his play style is just not, personally for me, it has not been enjoyable to watch this year. I don't like the way the Hawks have been running their offense, and I feel like that's turned people against Trae Young a little bit. And not really his fault. And clearly it's paying off in his numbers, not really in the win and loss column. But people don't like this take. The NBA is more talented than it's ever been. And people will disagree with me, but there are more talented guys at the top of the league now than there ever have been before. So I agree with you there. If there was ever a time to expand the All-Star game, it would be right now. And especially in a season like this where, playing in empty arenas, I think it's clearly had an impact on these guys' numbers. A lot of guys are having career seasons. So this year would have been a perfect year to expand the rosters.
Yeah, and if TJ Warren was playing, he probably would have been in the All-Star game as well. But yeah, I mean, talking about the All-Star reserves, you can say some people got snubbed. I forgot to mention DeMar DeRozan, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, though, he missed too many games, and the Heat aren't that good, even though they're 8th seed now. But at the time of the voting, the Heat weren't that good. All in all, I'm pretty okay with this list. I know that Jazz fans really wish that Mike Conley would have made it, and he's more than deserving. He should have been an all-star a long time ago. He's one of those guys that might go down as one of the best players to not make an all-star team.
Yeah, I actually didn't even believe that the other day when I heard that he had never played in an all-star game because he's had such a great career, especially those days in Memphis. But I guess that Memphis team was kind of like those Atlanta Hawks teams where they didn't really have one true superstar, but it was just a great collection of players. And the West was so tough during those years that, I mean, he got what happened to him this year happened to him back then. He was great, but he just wasn't good enough. And it's unfortunate because he is playing at an all-star level this year. But when it comes down to Chris Paul and him, like you said, I think Chris Paul is the clear and obvious choice.